Hello, everyone. I'm so thankful you're here today. In this episode, I had a few editing and recording difficulties. It was actually my first virtual episode. So thank you for bearing with me during this episode. I truly enjoyed the conversation and I'm especially grateful for Marina. It was late on her end, but we made it through. Marina is a young working mama from Chicago. She and I connected on Instagram, and now she lives with her husband in Texas. She has a deep love for her faith, having recently converted, and she's passionate about raising her children the Catholic faith. Without further ado, here's our conversation. I'm really thankful to the Lord that connected us through Instagram. How do you feel?
I am super excited. I'm also thankful that the Lord connected us through Instagram. I think it's just really cool, kind of the evangelization that's happening through social media, as well as like connecting people from, different backgrounds within the Catholic faith. I think it's really taking off. So I've been happy to be a part of it and just connect with people all over the country on various topics within the Catholic faith.
Yes, I've been just very inspired to do it. And this was planned like for almost more than a year now that my daughter's one. Um, and yeah, I was able, so back then what I did was I designed everything. I had everything set up in my head, but I didn't put it into action until now. And so I'm like, I'm just going to do it and let's see how it goes. So, I'm pregnant right now. And so we'll see where the Lord takes us. But, I have a few questions for you. I just want to start off by just knowing a little bit about yourself, your background, how your upbringing has been in the faith, and yeah, just feel comfortable, whatever you want to tell us, with your heart.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, no. My name's Marina. I'm 27. I live in Texas. I'm from Chicago, and then moved down here for work. I currently work in commercial real estate in the corporate finance space. Um, I have a little daughter who's born on New Year's Eve 2024, and a husband that I've been married to since December 30th, 2023. And yeah, so I've just kind of young family. My husband's a physical therapist, so it's really fun to have two different career types within the same house. I like to talk about that a lot too, because I think it's been really fruitful in our marriage, not to be, talking the same, talking about corporate to one another, that we're able to learn so much about one another's careers. Um, Daily life for me right now is a lot of working out, a lot of clacking away at my computer, a lot of nursing in the mornings and the nighttime, and just kind of keeping the house afloat.
I had just a few questions about that, but more about the faith aspect. How were you Catholic all your life? Were you a cradle Catholic or a convert?
I'm a convert, so I converted on Pentecost 2022. I was baptized Catholic when I was like a little tiny baby. Then I was raised Lutheran, and then kind of just throughout my childhood and some, divorced parents, kind of typical story, stepped a little bit away from faith as a whole. Ended up converting, in 2022, and what's really sparked my conversion was following like a really challenging time in my life in 2019. Towards the end of 2019, I got the chance to go to Israel. And so that kind of really sparked faith in me quite a bit. And it took a little bit of a journey to get to Catholicism. I explored a little bit in the non-denomination space and then ended up landing on Catholicism. It's kind of funny, all throughout my senior year of college in 2019, I went to Mass with one of my best friends, Emily. Couldn't tell you why I was going to Mass, and just kind of was just really like, just had this like feeling in me. And so I never missed a Mass my senior year of college. But it still took me, about 2 years after that to convert to Catholicism. So now I would say I'm, classic convert, still always learning, still constantly feel behind, but doing kind of the blogging and stuff that I've started to do with the Catholic Working Mama has kind of reignited just a different aspect of my faith, and just has caused me to do a lot more research and really deepen myself in the history of the church. So that's been really fun and really reignited a part of me in my faith. And other than that, faith and motherhood go hand in hand. That's kind of also what inspired the Catholic Working Mama. Is I had a little bit of a challenging time postpartum just because I'm like a social butterfly, and so I really connected a lot with Mother Mary a lot during postpartum. So faith is a part of my everyday life, and I'm so thankful that I found Catholicism.
That's really nice to hear because when I was going through postpartum and some of my part of my story is in already in my podcast, but Mother Mary, she is the perfect mother and helps us through those times that are very difficult and challenging. Um, but I'm really glad that you're now here on board, and it definitely does take a process because I've always been Catholic my whole life, but mostly culturally. And I did live a retreat in 2014 that changed my life, but it wasn't like a one impact thing that happened that changed me. It did take a little bit. It wasn't until like a few years later down the road, still trying to persevere and going to retreats, that I had sort of an encounter, a huge encounter, craving, wanting to know more about our faith. And I feel like the Holy Spirit throughout the whole time, now that I see back, 2014 to like the years later, I know that the Holy Spirit was working so much and, needed a lot of healing. And I feel like it's wonderful. The Catholic faith has so much to offer. And I always say to myself that like, if it would have happened earlier, maybe I wouldn't have been in my right mindset. But it got me right when I was in college, when I was already graduated and trying to like actually educate myself about my faith. Um, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And one of the things that really, really inspired me, and I was like, I need to get this mom on board, was that you are a working mom, right? And how is that? How if you want to share a little bit how your pregnancy was once you got married, and I'm sure you guys were open to life. How was that process for you, that whole journey?
I am someone, I think pregnancy was fun, but I'm not one of those people that's like, I love being pregnant. Um, and so pregnancy, it also was very, kind of religious, if you will, a lot of prayer. I think I'm a pretty relatively like anxious person. So, throughout a lot of my pregnancy, I'm just like, please be born healthy, please be born healthy. And so my daughter was actually born 3 weeks early. And so that was kind of a whirlwind. I like always, I like joked around a lot when she was a little bit younger that I'm like, I never got to enjoy my last, good night of sleep. And now she sleeps through the night and everything. God, thank God. But it was a whirlwind to be hit with a responsibility. Obviously, you're anticipating because, I was 8 months pregnant, but just kind of hit with it, but a little bit before it actually happened. And so, yeah, pregnancy was great. My husband's incredibly supportive and just, oh my gosh, like even when we were dating, I knew he was going to be a great dad. And so just to watch him become a dad and be a girl dad at that has been a really fun journey. And then it just into working while pregnant. It's interesting. There was a point in time where, I couldn't see my feet, but, I'm still wearing jeans or, I really like to embrace femininity at work. So I also wore a lot of long dresses. So anyone listening that's, thinking about getting pregnant soon or is pregnant and working, get so many long dresses. Shameless plug. I love this brand Hill House. It's great for nursing too if you're postpartum, but just I wore a lot of really comfy clothes, but really feminine and still professional clothes that really kind of helped a lot with work, like being pregnant at work. And then did maternity leave. Um, I'm the first person in my whole family to kind of work in the corporate world. And I'm extremely, have been driven. I was raised by a waitress and a firefighter. And was really determined just to enhance the financial future of my bloodline. And so I was really determined and still remain incredibly determined to, continue working and continue to grow within my career and my current, child that I have, as well as all future children I might have, God willing. I'm really determined to set them up for financial success. So I think that's a lot of where my career motivation comes from. And so, I always knew I was going to go back to work following, giving birth and stuff like that. So I took 3 months off, returned to work, and leading the week, wrote about this in one of my articles, that the week leading up to going back to work is like one of the most daunting and vulnerable times I've ever had in my life. Just kind of, you believe one thing and you're so keen on it, but at the same time you're so scared. I spent 3 months connected to this, little being for 3 months straight. How am I supposed to leave her? So I was incredibly like terrified. And then, the first day was really, really hard. I even went back, when I went back on my first day back at work. Our daycare is pretty close to our house. And I went and held her and cried during my lunchtime because I was so like sad. And then as the days went on that first week, it started getting easier and easier. And I felt like I was getting, there's a phrase that kind of goes around. I felt like I was getting my pink back quite a bit, because I felt like this is what kind of the space that God called me to be in, and the season that God called me to be in was to be a working mom. And I feel like a lot of postpartum, was challenged a lot with my mental health because I was just locked in and alone the whole time, and I didn't have a lot of that adult connection. So that's something that going back to work really, really helped with. Was maintaining that adult connection, and my company has been incredible in the transition back to work and remains, really incredible and understanding throughout. She's a little bit older now, but the days she's sick and stuff like that, they've just been incredible, like a great place to work throughout this like transformative part of life.
No, that's great to hear. It sounds like your work makes it possible for you to even feel that that safe, safe, and also at the same time comfortable to be able to leave your daughter and just having that security, work security, your job. That's really
Yeah.
important. You mentioned mental health during postpartum,
Hmm.
and I went through the same thing. Like I struggled a lot. It wasn't until 4 months that I was 4 months postpartum that I was able to like go out and actually be in our prayer community again and go back to like seeing people. I
Hmm.
definitely did feel disconnected, but it's like this wanting to just be alone, but at the same time not alone. It's kind of an interesting feeling.
Hmm. Yeah.
Did Was your labor easy or was it hard?
Labor, I labored, so it kind of felt like it was out of a movie. And I think I was also really scared of labor just because, like, if you spend too much, I'll always tell people, don't spend too much time on social media as a pregnant person
No,
because you'll be
don't.
terrified about just about everything. And like, everything is going wrong to everybody. That's how it seems. But so my labor, I woke up on New Year's Eve, so the day after my first wedding anniversary, which I always like to say because I think it's hilarious. So day after my first wedding anniversary, woke up at about 5:30 a.m. Water broke. Called my friend before I called my OBGYN because she's a nurse, and just was like, "Is this what water breaking is?" She's like, "Yeah," kind of explained to me like what her personal philosophy on labor a little bit at home as much as you can. Go to the hospital when you feel like you can't take it anymore, and that's exactly what I did. So I probably labored at home, and I'm at the point of postpartum where I don't remember like every little detail of labor, but I still remember like kind of the big picture parts that happened, and so. Um, labored at home for about 2-ish hours, then went to the hospital. By the time I was at the hospital, I was at a 5. By the time I got an epidural, I was at an 8. And following the epidural, I got an epidural. So five, the thing about 5:30 in the morning, now where I got an epidural at about 11:30-ish, I want to say, and then only pushed for 45 minutes, and boom, she was born at 12:31 on 12:31.
Wow.
Yeah, so and it was the most surreal, amazing experience. There's nothing that can explain the relief and the joy and like just the spirit that fills the room when you give birth and just the light. Like it's a memory and a feeling I wish I could capture in like a little jar and keep forever because it was such a beautiful experience.
Wow, I remember mine too, and I have back to back. So I remember my first one. So it was in 2023, and then another one last year. Um, and then again in I think the end of January. They told me they haven't set the date, but it's either the
Mhm.
end of January or the beginning of February. But yeah, what you said was totally true. Like there's not even words to describe that feeling of just having your newborn in your hands. Um, what about like your support system? Did you have a doula or was it just your husband?
It was just my husband. I really wanted it that way. I just kind of wasn't well read on doulas and stuff like that, and I consider it to be such like a personal experience. So, yeah, my husband was my doula.
That yeah, so I did have a doula for the first one, but she was pregnant, and so I don't know what happened to me, but during the whole time I was laboring, I didn't want her to do anything. I was worried about her.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's so
my
selfless.
yeah,
It's
I
like
was
peak
like,
selflessness.
no, don't do anything because she's pregnant, and I was like just focusing on my husband. But yeah, and then the second one, I did have one, but then she was late. Like she came right towards like when I was pushing her out, and then she was out. So yeah, I mean it's good. I feel like I learned a lot by a lot of the strategies they would tell me.
Oh yeah.
And
We took a birthing class and I really liked that just on like the power of the and like my husband's a PT, so that was really helpful with like just kind of prepping for your body for birth.
yes, yes, I actually wanted to ask you, how did you two meet? I know it's going everywhere, all these questions, but how, because you said 2019, like, and then, you're young. And so it's like, how did you meet and then got married?
So we met in 2021. So I was living in Dallas for a year and and a few months. And one of my friends brought me to a like a football watch party for the school that my husband went to. And I had nothing to do with this school. I went to school way up north in the Big Ten. He went to like an SEC school. And so I just randomly decided to go to this watch party with my friend, and I saw him in dark hair and cross necklace. So I decided to go talk to him, and it ended up being a huge game, um, for him, or a huge game for his school that his school won. It was a big upset, and so we started going on dates after that, and it was just kind of like just cliche little love story. We knew probably 2 months in that we were going to get married eventually. He proposed, if I need to do some math, like 14 months after that. And then we got married. Yeah, so he proposed. So we met, oh my gosh, we started dating in November. Then we got engaged not the next November, but the February after that November. So yeah, like 14 months. We got engaged in February and then got married in December of 2023. And so
Wow. Oh,
and then I had a baby December 2024.
yeah, that is such wow, a blessing. It's
Yeah.
very,
It was a journey. It was like, and then
definitely.
yeah.
My husband and I, we took 5 years, but we were distant. So he was in California and I was in Oregon. And so that's why it took a little bit, but also the pandemic hit, which I always like to excuse myself. But also, I think I was not ready yet. I was still working on my master's degree, and I was thinking of working in my career field for like a little bit. And then I was like, then maybe, but I was like afraid of taking that step. Did you have a good upbringing, or him too, in both of you guys' families that you were like, yeah, we'll get married soon, like right away?
So I come from divorced parents, but my parents are very good friends. I always like, yeah, that like I never there I feel like when you have divorced parents, you either strongly believe in you witness something that in their marriage that didn't work that makes you believe in marriage 10 times harder, or you choose to completely reject marriage and the institution of marriage and yada yada yada. And so I fall into the first category where, I witnessed parts of their marriage and and again, there's really great friends now, which
Yeah.
is something that a rarity. And so it made me, I've always been a believer of marriage and just the fruits of it. And now learning more about marriage and as the sacrament of matrimony in the Catholic faith, I believe in it 10 times
Oh yeah.
more, than I already did. And then my husband's cradle Catholic. Parents are still married. Parents are incredible. He had a really, really great upbringing. So different, family life backgrounds, but I believe a lot of how the Catholic Church prepares us for marriage, and marriage prep, and following the rules and not living together and all that stuff was just super, like, I would tell the most atheist, agnostic, whatever religion you want to be, that even following, the Catholic Church's guidance on like not living with one another and stuff like that, like the fruits of it are incredible. And God's design of it is so perfect to follow those steps prior to getting married. Um, so I'm pretty vocal about that, just like believing that the Catholic Church is kind of the right take on it and really does set people up for success.
Yes, no, definitely. And I feel like there's still a little bit more education that you have to do on your part. I don't know if it happened with you and your experience, but at least like here, it does take a little bit for you as an engaged couple or newly engaged, for you, if you want to go even deeper, to believe or to know more about like the theology of the body and then sexuality, and going deeper into marriage, because sometimes they just do like the very surface things. But my husband and I, we try to really study, because it did take 5 years, and so we did want to study and do a lot of things on our own. And both our families' backgrounds doesn't really support or helped us. And so we both have kind of started it all on our own, and we had to like really just do it all fresh. And just by hearing or knowing people that we look up to, and couples that have like 8 kids or 5 kids, and are living up sort of a traditional Catholic life. But I feel, in my opinion, I think there could be a little bit more work, in the marriage prep, because I don't know if it varies in states, but I got married. I live in Oregon. We got married in California, but it was a sanctuary. And so the marriage prep was amazing. I always recommend everyone to go there, that people that I know around, because they did a 100 questionnaire, and it was kind of like, they call it a test where, and I don't know if any of our listeners are going to be familiar with this, but my husband, he had to do it on his own. I had to do it on my own. We couldn't like cheat, they told us. And it was always the priest doing it for us. And in the end, when we turned it in, and we did everything that they told us to do and took our time, they wanted to see if because there were really deep questions. So financial questions, how to educate children, how you allow the other family to come into your marriage, and things like that. And it was really an eye opener, but it was so interesting because we already have spoken about those topics beforehand. So the priest was like, there's nothing here that I can find for you guys to fight about. And so, and it was 100. So it was a lot of thinking and a lot of just praying. But my husband and I, we did a lot of prayer. So I think that helped just our relationship to really grow. But yeah, no, I'm glad. I feel like because I didn't really know much about the faith until 2014. So I was at the end of my bachelor's. So I was still in college. And I remember there was once that in the Newman Center, I don't know if you know about the Newman Centers.
I've heard of the new
Yeah.
center, yeah.
So like a lot of the kids didn't know about not cohabitating, and I learned it. And so there was once when this guy just said, "Oh, well, why don't we just live together so we can figure out if we are meant to be, and know it that way." And I was shocked because I was so naive. I said, wait, you're Catholic though. Why? I just learned that we can't do that. And you're saying this. And so I felt like a lot of education still needs to happen. Because some people, they might have such a great background, or I've met people that come from, they've gone to Catholic schools, or, high school and everything, but still there's always so much to learn in the Catholic faith. And some things that are just obvious, but then others are, it's like, no, it's not obvious for me because I didn't have to go through it, or nobody ever told me. And so, yeah, no, I'm so glad that things worked out for you, and that your husband has a great upbringing in the faith. And I feel like the parents are always the greatest foundation for that.
Absolutely. And I also think that like finding marriage mentors, I would always recommend that to anybody. You kind of touched on that earlier.
Hmm.
There was a couple, the old coworker of mine and his wife, and they have 7 kids and very, great Catholic family, like just amazing Catholic family. And just really well studied on Catholicism too, and like their children are just they're just great. And so she's like my mom mentor, and I would consider them marriage mentors of my husband and I's, because like they model what Catholic marriage and Catholic family life looks like so well.
Yeah, no, it's such a blessing. I feel like it's a gift, and that God brings those gifts for you in the moment that you need it the most, because I have a couple of those too, and I cherish them so much because I'm like, I
Yes.
have a question about this, like thinking ahead in a few years. How would you start this conversation with your child?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
One of the things too is like going back to when you started working, how were your feelings exactly? Like, did you know all the time that you were going to go to work because that's all there is? Or was it a decision made for you? Or did you feel like at peace? Like, how was it? How was that process like?
I felt absolutely at peace with it. I felt like it was an avenue I was specifically called to by God. And so I think going back to work, I had immense peace in my time back at work. It came with bumps on the road, like of course, like just like any season of life, any season of significant transformation and transition. But I think that if God didn't want me to do this, I would feel incredibly uneasy every day going into work, and I don't. And I really love the people I work with and the place that I work. And so I just truly felt like I was called by God to be a working mother, to continue to be a working mother, and be a role model. For my daughter and the other women around me, that no matter how much, I think like it's a kind of a popular thing to try to tell women they can't and whatnot. But I think that if it's something that you want, that you should. You know, that there is nothing wrong, and there is nothing makes you less of a mother to be a working mother, no matter
No.
what anybody says on the internet, because I think that's a really popular thing going around right now.
Yes, it is. It's and everything, because I remember I was working my first year when my kiddo was my firstborn. Um it it can kind of make you feel guilty, and
Yeah.
also like, but there's no other, like, I have to do this. There's no other way. And
Mhm.
and it was nice because part of the majority of my work was I was able to stay at home and do things virtually.
Mhm.
Next pregnancy, that's a whole other story though that happened in my work. And I was, so for me, in my experience, I did have a very hard labor, a very hard healing process physically. And so it took me like a little bit to just be like, I don't know if I want to actually go to work. I love my job because I work with families and kiddos with special needs under 5. So I was always around babies and all that. But once I became a mom, like it did change for me. And I
And that
felt,
happens to a lot of people
yeah,
too.
yeah,
And there's nothing like, and I say all this with also saying like there is such nobility in staying at home too. Like I'd argue that's harder like
oh
than
yes,
going.
no,
And
trust me.
so like I have such immense respect for stay-at-home moms, and I also know that not everyone's story is the same as mine. As I went back and I started to feel better, mentally
Yeah,
and
yeah.
whatever. And so I know that that other aspect of it happens to people as well. And I think it ultimately comes down to people making the right choice for their family. But I think it's important and incredibly, and like the narrative on it is that out of these three options, staying at home, working, but wanting to stay at home, or working and loving it, neither one of those are wrong. And you're just choosing what's best for your family, and all three of those choices are incredibly biblical.
Yeah, in the end, I feel like it really depends on, what God is calling you to do. Because I had this, battle inside of me the whole time, but I was silent that, okay, God, if you really want me to not work and stay at home and be with my kid, because at that point, I didn't know that another one was going to come too soon. And so then, I was like, you have to make it happen. So that was my prayer. I said, you have to make it happen because it won't be from me. I love my job. It costs money to go to school and to get a master's
Yeah.
and licensure. I still have an active teaching license. And so all of that, it's like, I don't want it to go to waste. So you battle and all that. And then when you are also needed, like you feel in a way needed some part of it, even though there's a lot of people that can replace you, of course. But at work, there's always things to do, and so it was a battle for me. And so then once I got pregnant with my other one, things a lot of things happened at work, so it was out of my control and out of my hands. So in a way, I was like forced to like say, okay, I'm done. I'm resigning. Um, and it was painful, but because of the way at how it happened, and that's going to be in another total episode. But in the end, I'm blessed that it did happen the way it did, because if it hadn't been that way, then I feel like it wouldn't have been, um, I wouldn't be with my kids right now. And because I've worked and I've been to daycares, I've been to different, educational centers for young babies, and also talked to other moms, working moms in the field. When I was not pregnant or having kids, I was always like, I felt like this huge thing in my heart. Okay, I would never leave my kids. So that's another question. Like, what do you have a daycare that you leave your kid, or family members?
My daughter goes to daycare. We don't have any family kind of within 2 hours of where we live, so we complete like daycare's our village.
Okay.
And we're blessed with a really, really, really great daycare. And so I think that's, when I talk about like all of this kind of being like God's design, God's calling, like everything just went so swimmingly that it was so divine.
And that's
And
how it
so,
is. I mean,
yeah.
when it's his work, everything just flows, and there's no anxiety, there's no pressure, there's no tension. It's just peaceful and it flows. And of course, we're always needing to be praying about, the next step, because I'm sure she's going to be growing up. Are you planning on doing homeschooling, or because I know that there are working moms, Catholic moms that do homeschooling as well. They're able to make it work. I've heard. I don't know how that looks like though. But what are you thinking about that?
I haven't really thought about it enough yet. I definitely just like my line of work, I wouldn't be able to homeschool and work the job that I do.
Yeah.
So probably not, but I hope to involve some sort of Catholic education. But we also have really great schools by us. And so I haven't sat down and thought about it yet. We're a few years out from
Yeah.
it, so
Yeah.
I'm not stressing too much yet.
Yeah. And what are so if other mamas like are in the same position that you are, what are some advice that you would give when it comes to working the vocation as a wife and a mama, and then, the family life? What would you tell other mamas?
So I would say live an ordered life. So God, spouse, children, work. I think that's that's God's design of an ordered life, and that is should be the pinnacle of kind of how you operate. Other advice I'd give is to be really, really organized and um, if something like put as much effort as you do into work as to being like I'm like the CEO of the home sometimes I feel like, and so like doing like bills and administrative stuff like parse out part of your Saturday morning to handle that stuff so it's not constantly floating around your head throughout the work week. Another thing that I think is incredibly important to moms, people without children even, is to exercise. This is the wife of a PT coming out in me, but I think the reason I had a really great birth and something that's really, helped my overall health, especially my mental health, now that I'm like further out postpartum, is I work out a ton. I do Orange Theory. I'm like really obsessed with Orange Theory actually. And so I think that's incredibly important. And during postpartum, working out looked a lot different. It looked like going on walks. It looked like, putting as much effort as I could because, I worked out at the Y by my house and I brought the stroller there just so I can lift some weights. Like, but I think working out is super, super important to maintaining just overall balance in your life. And I think the way that we're, moms who are working or moms who aren't working, everything's about balance, right?
Yes.
Like if you are a working mom, you need to balance, staying at home, or if you're a working mom, you need to balance work life, husband, kids. If you're, a stay-at-home mom, you need to balance home, kids, husband, and hobbies. That's something that also, working or not, that I think women and mothers need hobbies and need to have, something that they do for themselves. And it's really easy to wrap up an entire identity into motherhood. But I also think God calls us to special talents and special things outside of motherhood. Like you are a great example with this podcast, like keep pouring into that because it is an outlet. And I think moms need outlets. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having an outlet. So I would also recommend that. For me, it's reading, it's doing my nails, it's writing, shopping,
Yeah,
just
like all the girly
working out.
things.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm really, really glad that you talked about this because I I don't know how I forgot about this, but yeah, the health aspect. And yeah, like you said, you're married to PT. I went to Orange Theory after 6 months postpartum with my firstborn. And what was interesting is that, so I started out very slow, and I always keep saying that it was because it was my first ever giving birth, and so I was scared of moving my body. So they really helped me to do the steps or do the things, the movements that they recommended me to do. And it was expensive, but at the same time, I was still working, so I was able to do that. And it helped me so much, my mental health, and then just feeling good. And I remember I balanced everything like it was totally fine. I did it in the early mornings. So once my baby was able to sleep through the night, I started this new routine where, in a way, it's a discipline because you need to put, you need to prioritize that. If you don't prioritize that, then that's going to be hard. And I feel like that's why also my second born was the way it was because I did have that little bit of me going to work out. Um, but yeah, and so after that though, it was not able, like I was not able to do it. We moved and all these things happened, but I'm so glad you brought that up because I feel like sometimes we women, we don't, or we make sometimes excuses, but sometimes it's a workout. Like right now I have two toddlers and I'm always up and down the stairs. And so I'm like, okay, this is my gym.
I love it. That's, yeah, my baby, she's probably over 20 pounds by now. And I'm like, you're the weight of a dumbbell. You're a
Oh,
kettlebell size baby.
yeah. And so I know that you said a little bit about how your upbringing was really good. And that's why both of you, your husband, you were open to getting married and having a family without a problem, like really fast. How was your prayer life before getting married and then coming together as a husband and wife?
It definitely marriage and having kids as well, or having my daughter, enhanced my prayer life each step of the way. I think it causes you to be, I think, each life transition that has to do with growing your family, becoming family with your husband and be having a baby. All those are steps to growing your family. Is your prayers stop um, and I wrote about this in one of my other articles, is my prayers used to be so anxious and selfish. And now they're more praying about the health of my husband and my daughter. Like they're way less self-centered. So I think that and just like, God, if this can happen and that can happen, and I'm freaking out about this, like there's been such ease and just different focus within my prayer life. And it's been a lot of health focused, is because I've realized um, just how important health is in life in general. So, yeah.
No, that's really good to hear. And then, of course, it changes through season, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And then, what would you say to newly engaged couples, or any advice that you could give to them, looking back in that process when you were, in the honeymoon process, the going to the whole planning, because getting married is a huge step, and then there's all these things that you need to worry about just so you can look at you can look back at photos and all that. Or was there something that you feel like you could tell to any newly couples?
No, I would say don't spend too much money on one day. I feel like everyone says that, but I like to say that too. I like to a lot of things that I did a lot of things myself. Like I really like doing like Canva stuff. But if you've seen my Instagram, I'm all over. I love
Yeah.
Canva. And so try to do as much as as much yourself as you can. People don't remember your centerpieces, they remember your food. Food, in my opinion, is the most important photographer. um and it's not that, the party, it's not that serious. What matters is the sacrament. And so to focus on the sacrament and not worry, if your veil is falling off or your shoe. It's super
Yeah.
funny. My shoes, I never try. I bought my wedding shoes, never wore them, and then decided to still wear them on my wedding day. Terrible idea. They were like way too tall and a total nightmare to walk down the aisle in. I walked down the aisle with them, spent, did all the church stuff in that pair of shoes, and then wore slides the rest of the day. So like things will not not everything will go according to plan. And I'm like very type A when it comes to like planning things. So like not everything will go according to plan, and that's okay. Like our getaway car. crashed out, didn't work, so we didn't have the getaway car that we plan on having, and my husband's dad like drove us in the back of his pickup truck, and we said bye to everyone. So like, there's beauty in the unplanned. So, and enjoy the day. You'll remember the day for the rest of your life, and it's not the moments that you think.
Yes. Thank you for saying all that. It's so true. I agree with you 100%. And was there any advice that was told to you? I'm curious about this, that was helpful, that anyone around you or something that you remember until this day?
Don't know, honestly.
Okay.
Like, I can't, nothing's coming to mind specifically right now. Um, just to enjoy marriage and to be open to life. You know, we got pregnant pretty quickly, and I think that's something, the openness to life thing as I converted was something that I really struggled with. And I heard a quote from a different like Catholic influencer who she used birth control for the first chunk of her marriage and then eventually transitioned to NFP. And she said if it was up to me, like what made her kind of change her mind if she was like holding one of her babies and she was like, if it was up to me, you wouldn't be here right now. And so that's made me really reflect on what I was so afraid of. As well as some conversations I've had with that marriage mentor couple. Like, no one's ever had a kid and regretted it.
Yeah.
Like, and so and something I was, the openness to life thing, I was a little scared, then got more comfortable, then got pregnant, and then was like, oh my God, I'm so excited, I'm having a baby girl, and would not want it any other way.
Yeah, I feel like that's the same thing happened to me. Like I said, the first year it was a struggle, but I had an ectopic pregnancy, so that really was an eye opening because it was like God telling me like you really wanted this, but it was hard, of course, and then I couldn't talk about it for a
Yeah.
long time, but then right away came my firstborn, and so I feel like that is something that is very common. I hear
It
this all
happened
the
to
time.
me too. I
Yeah.
had a chemical pregnancy, and I'm like you, didn't talk about it right away.
Yeah.
And it makes you kind of realize like how bad you actually deep down do want something.
Yes, of course.
Even if you are a little afraid of it.
I was hearing another podcast, and I think the way she said it was so good. I don't think I can quote it, but she said something about like how we in the beginning we say, "Oh yeah, we're open to life," but then deep inside we're like, but there's a little struggle there."
Yeah.
There's something there, and I feel like sometimes it's due to like wounds, and so we just need healing, because we should be free, like we should be having we should feel like we have freedom to give life and have that desire. And if we don't, then what is it that blocks it, or what is it? Because it could be fears, but then it could be something that happened also um during your time in utero with your mom, or any time between before birth. And then I studied infant toddler mental health, so I know that there's a lot of things that can happen, what that we don't know about, and then of course things that we do know about that we go through in our school years or high school, college, and all of that. But yeah, I'm so glad that we were open to say this, because I know we're not the only ones, because we
Oh,
just had this
absolutely.
we just had this conversation, and you know we didn't know each other too long ago, and just right now, and for us to say this, like, I'm sure there's so many people out there, um and yeah, if you're a discerning young single woman right now at this time listening, just know that you're not alone, and prayer does a huge difference. Prayer brings peace, and Mama Mary will bring you that comfort that you need. And with that, Marina, do you have any favorite saint or a quote or something about a Bible verse or anything that has helped you through this journey as a working mother, um, and I don't know, it just keeps you going.
So I recently did an article talking about sainthood at work. So I connected a lot with Saint Catherine of Siena because she was kind of active and outspoken, and I like to consider myself pretty active and outspoken. And also Saint Gianna Beretta Mola. Um, I connected with her quite a bit too as a working mom. And as well as Mother Mary, just kind of carried me through a lot of early motherhood. So that those are, yeah, the ones that I connect to the most.
Catherine of Siena is my patron saint, and I love her so much. She is on fire all the time.
I know I love her. I'm like, girl, you were causing a ruckus, and I love it. And she was so into activism and like made great change. You know, she brought the papacy back to Rome. Pretty cool. Pretty impressive, honestly.
Yes, and yeah, there's that book. Oh, I don't have the title right now. The dialogue, right? She has that book, and I feel like if you really want to know more about Catherine of Siena and what we're saying about her right now, really look up into her because it will just change your perspective. And especially right now, I feel like I mentioned it on my other podcast, that there's this huge shift that has awoken us Christians, and especially in the Catholic faith, that we shouldn't be falling asleep or be quiet because a lot of things are happening in the world, and we need to be outspoken and teach our children to not be fearful about the truth. I feel like there's a lot of that already trying to doctrinate the children at a young age, which is so sad because they're innocent. Something that's totally false. Things are happening right now in the world, but then our job is to like teach them, no, that's not the way it is. We want to show them, and it starts really early. It doesn't really have an age. I mean, because as we start those little habits at home, then they're going to see it. They follow, they imitate what we model to.
Absolutely.
And then the other last question I have before we close up, and you can take a little bit if you haven't yet, but what would you tell your younger self? And it doesn't matter how young, um, but if you see yourself young and maybe like a little girl before all of this, how your life is now, what would you tell her? What is something that you really want your younger self to believe in?
That you God will direct you to where you're supposed to go and keep running in the direction that He pushes you in and stop being afraid of Him.
That's what.
Stop being so reluctant. I said this on a different podcast that I'm going to be on the Voices of Conversion one, where something I deeply regret is when I had the kind of inkling that I was going to be Catholic eventually, I didn't act on it right away. So my advice to my that self was all in on Catholicism earlier. You would have saved yourself so much confusion.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like that comes too, just being hesitant or, like you said, reluctant. But now that you brought this up, um, I'm just really curious, and I really want to ask you, when you converted, how was your family, your parents,
So
and all that?
everyone reacted really well. Like I'm the only Catholic in my family. My grandparents are Catholic, but like my parents aren't practicing Catholics, and I think that they are not as curious about it as I thought they would be, but they're very respectful of it, and I think that's all you can really ask for, honestly.
Okay, so in a way, it's not you haven't had a bad experience.
Oh, no, 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 not at all.
Okay, well, that's great. No,
Yeah.
thank you. Is there anything that you would like to add? I mean, This is your
Um,
time, Marina.
Follow me on the Catholic Working Mama on Substack and Instagram. Instagram's more for like the funny content, the Canva content, and then the Substack is kind of where I pour my heart out in different topics of motherhood, career, and faith. And I would love any and all feedback as I'm just getting started. I would love just more people. I hope to, my main goal of this is to connect. I think there's a ton of working moms out there, Catholic working moms, I should say, that feel very isolated in their interest in working and their passion for working as Catholic moms because the conversations around that aren't really as positive as they should be. Because, it's completely biblical to be a Catholic working mom, even though some people might frame it not to be. So that my main goal is to connect people here in this space and connect with other moms working or not, just in general, and to use, social media for good and to evangelize others and to help others and to connect others. And so, yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, no worries. I'll be sharing everything that she said. I'll be having it on the notes below. If you follow on Spotify or any podcast, I'll also be having it on YouTube, so you'll be able to find her easily. And that's how I found her too, because I'm new right now on my Instagram page for Confessions of a Catholic Mama, and she popped up, and I think the algorithm just put us together.
Literally. Yeah.
But yeah, I was looking over your Substack and it's really good. Thank you so much for doing that because I feel like we need to have mamas tell their stories. You shouldn't, I mean, there's of course a process. There was a time in my life when I didn't want or I didn't feel like sharing, but then I know that if you are in the right mindset and you feel like it's time to do it, or you feel comfortable in doing it, to not be afraid to do it, because other mamas are out there that might be living the same thing or might be feeling the same thing, and they would love to know that you also went through that and that they're not alone, because I felt alone personally at some point. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you so much, Marina. You have a wonderful time. I know that's
Dang.
time difference, and
Yeah.
you sacrificed your time to be doing this, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and God bless you and your
Yeah,
family.
well, we'll be in touch. Thanks so much for having me and
Oh,
have a
yes,
great night.
definitely. We'll keep in touch, and then we'll have another episode, hopefully, in another time. And then,
Yeah,
yeah, let us know if you have
perfect.
any comments down below, wherever you're at. And thank you, everyone, for listening. You have a blessed time. Thank you, Marina.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Before we close, please go over the podcast platform, whichever you're in, subscribe, rate our show, and leave a review so more and more people can get to know about this journey and know that mamas were not alone. Also, follow Marina and her journey as a working mama and read over her articles. Support her in that way. I want to gently invite you to prayerfully consider visiting our website support page. There are many ways you can help, and truly, it means a lot for us. We want to bring you the best quality possible and keep inspiring others in this journey as in motherhood and as mamas. But as always, I want to end saying she loves, she serves, she's mama.